As the sun slowly dipped below the horizon, casting a warm golden glow over the rolling fields, Sarah stood at the edge of the cliff, her heart heavy with grief. The salty sea breeze tousled her hair as she gazed out at the endless expanse of ocean before her. Memories of happier times flooded her mind, making her chest tighten with longing. She clenched her fists, trying to push down the overwhelming surge of emotions threatening to consume her. How could she go on without him? Without the one person who had always understood her, who had been her rock through the toughest of times. Tears welled up in her eyes, blurring her vision of the vast sea stretching out before her. Taking a deep breath, she mustered all the strength she had left and made a decision. It was time to let go, to say goodbye to the pain and sorrow that had consumed her for far too long. With a final glance back at the setting sun, its fading light reflecting off the tears trailing down her cheeks, Sarah took a step forward. The wind whispered softly in her ear, as if guiding her towards a new beginning, towards a future filled with endless possibilities. As she closed her eyes and felt the ground disappear beneath her feet, a sense of weightlessness enveloped her. For a brief moment, she allowed herself to let go of all her fears and doubts, surrendering to the unknown that lay ahead. And then, with a rush of exhilaration and freedom, Sarah plunged into the depths below. The cool embrace of the water wrapped around her, washing away the pain and sadness that had held her captive for so long. As she resurfaced, gasping for air and reveling in the sensation of being alive, Sarah knew that this was just the beginning. The journey towards healing and self-discovery would be long and challenging, but she was ready to face it head-on. With newfound determination burning in her soul, Sarah set her sights on the horizon, where the first twinkling stars of the night sky began to appear. The world was vast and full of possibilities, and she was ready to embrace it all. As the storm raged outside, Sarah found herself pacing back and forth in the dimly lit living room. Her heart was pounding, her mind racing with doubt and fear. The letter in her trembling hands was a stark reminder of the past she had tried so hard to leave behind. The words on the paper were like a knife through her heart, reopening wounds she thought had long healed. She could still remember that fateful night when everything had changed. The sound of shattering glass, her mother's desperate cries, the feeling of helplessness as she huddled in a corner, trying to block out the chaos around her. And then the silence that followed, the eerie stillness that hung in the air like a heavy fog. But now, years later, the past had come knocking on her door in the form of a letter from the one person she had vowed never to see again. The words on the paper were a twisted mix of apology and accusation, a plea for forgiveness laced with bitterness and regret. Sarah's hands shook as she read the familiar handwriting, each word stirring up memories she had buried deep within her soul. She had spent years trying to forget, trying to move on with her life and leave the nightmares of her past behind. But now, faced with the ghosts she had tried so hard to outrun, she felt like a scared little girl again, lost and alone in a world that had turned its back on her. Outside, the wind howled and the rain beat against the windows like a relentless drum. The storm seemed to mirror the turmoil in Sarah's heart, the conflicting emotions that threatened to consume her. Should she respond to the letter, confront the demons that had haunted her for so long? Or should she do what she had always done, pack up her things and run, leaving the past behind once and for all? But as she stood there, torn between the pull of the past and the promise of the future, a sudden clarity washed over her. With a steely resolve, Sarah made a decision, her hands no longer trembling as she wiped away a tear that had escaped down her cheek. It was time to face her demons, to confront the darkness that had held her captive for so long. It was time to reclaim her power, to take back control of her life and finally find the peace she had been searching for all these years. And with that newfound determination burning bright in her eyes, Sarah knew that no storm, no matter how fierce, could ever hold her back again. As the storm outside raged on, the atmosphere inside the small cabin was tense. The old wooden walls creaked with each gust of wind, and the dim candlelight flickered ominously. Sarah shivered, both from the cold and from the fear that gripped her heart. She glanced at Peter, her longtime friend and companion on this treacherous journey, who sat across from her with a determined look on his face. "We can't stay here, Sarah," Peter said firmly. "We have to keep moving, no matter what." Sarah nodded, knowing that he was right. They had come too far, risked too much to let a mere storm stop them now. Gathering their strength, they rose to their feet and began to make their way towards the door. But just as Peter reached for the latch, a deafening crack split the air, and the roof above them began to buckle under the force of the storm. Time seemed to slow as Sarah and Peter exchanged a look of terror. Without a word, they both sprang into action, diving for cover as the roof collapsed in a deafening roar of splintering wood and flying debris. Sarah felt herself being thrown to the ground, the wind knocked out of her lungs as darkness engulfed her. When she came to, Sarah's head was pounding and her body ached all over. The cabin was in ruins around her, the storm still raging outside. Panic surged through her as she realized she was trapped beneath a heavy beam, unable to move. But then she heard Peter's voice, faint but determined, calling out to her from somewhere nearby. "Sarah!" he shouted. "Are you okay?" Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes as relief flooded through her. "Peter, I'm here! I'm trapped!" she cried, her voice raw with emotion. There was a moment of tense silence before she heard Peter's reassurance. "Don't worry, Sarah. I'll get you out. Just hold on." With renewed hope, Sarah clung to those words, and then the sounds of Peter's struggle to reach her filling her with both fear and determination. As the storm continued to rage outside, the two friends clung to each other, their wills unbroken despite the chaos surrounding them. Together, they would survive this, no matter what the storm threw their way. He couldn't believe his eyes as he stared at the letter in his hand. It had arrived out of the blue, turning his whole world upside down. The words on the page seemed to dance before him, mocking him with their cruel truths. His heart raced as he read the final sentence again, his breath catching in his throat. The past he had tried so hard to escape had caught up with him, unraveling his carefully constructed facade. The weight of his secrets pressed down on him, threatening to suffocate him with their heavy grip. How had they found him after all these years? How had they known where to look? Desperation clawed at him, driving him to his limit as he paced the room, the letter still clutched in his trembling hand. The memories he had buried deep within him resurfaced, raw and unrelenting. He could still hear the echoes of the past whispering in his ears, haunting him with their accusing voices. He had thought he was free, that he had left it all behind him. But now, faced with the stark reality of his past, he realized that he could never truly escape who he was. The lies he had told, the secrets he had kept, they had all come back to haunt him, demanding restitution for his sins. His mind raced as he tried to come up with a plan, a way to avoid the inevitable confrontation that loomed on the horizon. But deep down, he knew there was no running from the truth. It was time to face the consequences of his actions, to own up to the mistakes he had made. With a heavy heart, he made a decision, steeling himself for what was to come. The letter slipped from his fingers as he reached for the phone, knowing that the time had come to confront his past and finally find the redemption he so desperately sought. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting an orange glow across the sky, Sarah found herself at the edge of the cliff. The wind whipped through her hair, carrying the scent of salt water from the ocean below. She took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart. She glanced back to see the shadowy figure of the man who had been following her for days. His presence sent shivers down her spine, but she refused to show any fear. She had to confront him. She had to know why he was tracking her every move. "You've been following me," she called out, her voice steady despite the fear bubbling inside her. The man stepped closer, his face hidden in the growing darkness. "I needed to protect you," he replied cryptically. Sarah's eyes narrowed. "Protect me from what?" He hesitated, as if unsure how much to reveal. Finally, he spoke in a low, urgent tone. "There are dangerous forces at play here, forces that seek to use you for their own dark purposes." Sarah's heart thudded in her chest. She had sensed something sinister lurking in the shadows, but she never imagined she would be caught in the middle of a dangerous game. She took a step back, her mind racing with thoughts of escape. But the man raised a hand, a gesture of peace. "I want to help you. Please, trust me." Trust was a foreign concept to Sarah, who had spent most of her life fending for herself. But there was something in the man's eyes, a glimmer of sincerity that tugged at her. Reluctantly, she nodded. Together they sat on the edge of the cliff, the darkness enveloping them like a protective cloak. The man began to unravel a tale of ancient prophecies and forgotten powers, of a destiny that had been written long before Sarah was born. As he spoke, Sarah felt a strange sense of familiarity wash over her. It was as if pieces of a puzzle were finally clicking into place, revealing a picture she had never dared to imagine. And as the night grew darker, she knew that her life would never be the same again. As the clock struck midnight, a sense of foreboding filled the air. The moon hung high in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the abandoned mansion where Sarah found herself alone. Goosebumps rippled across her skin as she made her way through the dimly lit corridors, the old floorboards creaking beneath her every step. Suddenly, a haunting melody filled the air, echoing through the halls and sending shivers down Sarah's spine. She followed the sound, her heart pounding in her chest, until she reached a grand ballroom bathed in an ethereal light. There, standing in the center of the room, was a figure cloaked in shadow. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as the figure turned to face her, revealing piercing eyes that seemed to see right through her soul. "I've been waiting for you, Sarah," a voice whispered, sending a chill down her spine. "You hold the key to unlocking the secrets of this place." Confusion and fear warred within her as Sarah tried to make sense of the cryptic words. Before she could respond, the figure beckoned her forward, a ghostly hand outstretched towards her. With trembling hands, Sarah reached out and placed her hand in the figure's icy grip. Instantly, a rush of memories flooded her mind, memories of a past life intertwined with the mansion's dark history. She gasped as visions of betrayal and tragedy unfolded before her, each revelation more shocking than the last. And at the heart of it all was a love so profound and pure that it defied time itself. Tears welled in Sarah's eyes as she realized the true purpose of her return to the mansion. She was meant to unravel the tangled threads of the past, to bring closure to the tormented souls that still lingered within its walls. As the figure released her hand, a sense of peace settled over Sarah. She knew what she had to do, no matter the cost. With newfound resolve, she set out to uncover the truth and bring long-awaited redemption to those who had been trapped in the shadows for far too long. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden hues across the vast ocean, Sophia stood at the edge of the cliff, the wind tugging at her hair. She clutched the letter in her hand, the words scrawled across the page haunting her every thought. Tears welled up in her eyes as she read the final words again. "I'm sorry, but I can't do this anymore. You deserve better than me." The weight of his confession crushed her heart, shattering the future she had envisioned with him. Looking out at the endless expanse of water, Sophia felt like she was drowning in a sea of emotions. How could he give up on them so easily? The laughter, the late-night talks, the dreams they had shared, now reduced to a few lines on a piece of paper. But amidst the pain, a fierce determination ignited within her. She wouldn't let this be the end of their love story. Clutching the letter tightly, she turned on her heel and made her way back to town, her mind racing with a plan. The streets were deserted as she approached his house, the only sound the echo of her footsteps on the cobblestones. She hesitated for a moment at the door, her hand hovering over the handle. Taking a deep breath, she pushed it open and stepped inside. He was sitting on the couch, his head in his hands, lost in his own world of regret. At the sound of the door creaking open, he looked up, his eyes widening in disbelief at the sight of her standing there, a fierce determination in her gaze. Without a word, she crossed the room and knelt in front of him, handing him the letter. "Read it again," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. He unfolded the paper, his eyes scanning the words once more, and then he saw it, a single sentence she had added at the bottom in a bold, determined script. "I choose us, always." A single tear rolled down his cheek as he looked up at her, his heart bursting with love and disbelief. In that moment, he knew he had been given a second chance, a chance to rewrite their story, to make things right. And as they clung to each other in a fierce embrace, the weight of their past mistakes melted away, leaving only the promise of a future filled with love, forgiveness, and the unwavering belief that they were meant to be together, no matter the challenges they faced. As the storm raged outside, Jess found herself curled up on the couch, tears streaming down her face. She had finally found the courage to confront her past, but the pain was overwhelming. The memories flooded back, haunting her like a relentless ghost. She remembered the day she lost everything: her family, her home, her sense of security. It was a day etched in her mind with a deep, painful scar that never seemed to fade. Her heart ached as she recalled the look of betrayal in her father's eyes, the sound of her mother's sobs, the feeling of helplessness as everything crumbled around her. But amidst the darkness, a flicker of hope emerged. She thought of the kind stranger she had met earlier, whose words of wisdom had sparked a glimmer of light in her despair. She replayed their conversation in her mind, drawing strength from the encouragement and guidance she had received. As the thunder roared outside and the wind rattled the windows, Jess made a decision. She wiped away her tears, her gaze hardening with determination. She refused to be defined by her past any longer. She would face her demons head-on, no matter how terrifying they seemed. With a deep breath, Jess stood up, feeling a surge of newfound courage coursing through her veins. She picked up the phone and dialed a number she hadn't called in years. As the line rang, her heart pounded in her chest, uncertainty clawing at her resolve. But then a familiar voice answered on the other end. For a moment, Jess was speechless, the weight of her emotions threatening to swallow her whole. And yet she found her voice, strong and unwavering. "Mom," she said, her tone steady. "It's me, Jess. I need to talk to you." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the city skyline, Emily stood at the edge of the rooftop, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and determination. She had come too far to turn back now. Taking a deep breath, she closed her eyes and remembered all the trials she had faced, all the sacrifices she had made to get to this moment. The memory of her parents' disappointed faces, the ridicule from her colleagues, and the doubters who had dismissed her dreams fueled her resolve. Her hand trembled as she reached into her pocket and pulled out the small silver key that had led her on this journey. It was the key to a hidden door, a door that promised her the ultimate prize she had been seeking all along. With shaking hands, she approached the old, rusted door that stood alone on the rooftop. She inserted the key into the lock, the click echoing through the silence of the night. She pushed the door open, revealing a staircase that spiraled down into darkness. As she descended the staircase, a cold shiver ran down her spine. But she knew she had to keep going, no matter what awaited her at the bottom. The walls of the staircase seemed to close in on her, as if trying to push her back. But she pressed on, determined to see this through to the end. Finally, she reached the bottom of the staircase, where a faint light flickered in the distance. As she approached, she saw a small, ornate chest sitting in the center of the room. With trembling hands, she opened the chest and gasped at the sight before her. Inside lay a shimmering crystal, the likes of which she had never seen before. It glowed with an otherworldly light, filling the room with a warm, comforting energy. She could feel its power, its potential to change everything. Tears welled up in her eyes as she realized the magnitude of what she had found. This crystal held the key to unlocking her true destiny, to fulfilling her wildest dreams and desires. All she had to do was reach out and take it. But as she hesitated, a voice echoed in the chamber, sending chills down her spine. "Only the worthy can harness the power of the crystal. Are you truly ready to embrace your destiny, Emily?" Without a second thought, Emily nodded, her resolve hardening. She reached out and grasped the crystal, feeling its energy surge through her like a tidal wave. In that moment, she knew that her life would never be the same again. Tears streamed down her face as she stood in front of the old, dilapidated house that held so many painful memories. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what she knew she had to do. With a trembling hand, she pushed open the creaky door and stepped inside. The air inside was thick with dust and despair, but she forced herself to keep moving forward. She made her way through the familiar rooms, each one a bittersweet reminder of the life she had left behind. As she reached the back of the house, she came to the room that had haunted her dreams for years, the room where she had experienced so much pain and heartache. the room where she had made a choice that had changed the course of her life. She stood in the center of the room, her heart pounding in her chest. This was where it had all begun, where she had lost so much of herself. But as she looked around, she realized that this was also where she had found the strength to break free. With a sudden burst of determination, she began to clear away the debris that cluttered the room. She opened the curtains, letting in the light that had been absent for so long. And as she worked, she felt a sense of peace wash over her. Finally, as the last of the dust settled, she stood back and surveyed her work. The room was no longer a place of pain and darkness, but a space filled with light and hope. It was a reflection of the journey she had been on, the journey that had led her back to herself. As she walked out of the house, she knew that she was leaving behind more than just a building. She was leaving behind the ghosts of her past, the doubts and fears that had held her captive for so long. And in their place, she carried with her a newfound sense of strength and freedom. She took one last look back at the house, a smile on her lips and tears in her eyes. It was time to move forward, to embrace the future that was waiting for her. And as she walked away, she knew that she was finally free.